everybody. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Night Terrors Radio. As always, I'm your charming, charismatic, handsome host, Ash Hamilton, not to mention humble. I have with me Mark Gray, our West Coast representative.
Hello.
We've got a couple of West Coast representatives tonight, as Rob, unfortunately, is due out. He is currently, unfortunately, under the weather. Apparently, they're trying to remove a 4.5-pound hemorrhoid from Rob today. So our hearts and our prayers, our thoughts go out to Rob. He's actually on vacation in Maine. He does not have a 4-pound hemorrhoid, although the reports I've heard do put them in at the 2 to 3.5-pound mark. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We have a great show lined up. We have Jeanne Young. Jeanne Young is an actress. She is our second West Coast representative tonight. And Jeanne has some fantastic stories. Like, I met Jeanne, what is now about over a year ago, Jeanne?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
Yep.
we were creating a little film that picked up a lot of steam, and then COVID just rapidly fisted into submission, unfortunately. So it's still there. It's still sort of germinating, or we can even say
It's coming
we
back.
can even say festering, considering the nature of the script if we really wanted to. But we formed an immediate friendship with Jeanne. She's just got a great personality. She's got a ton of fantastic stories. So we're going to get into that a little bit tonight. First, as we always do.
First, I want to give you my
Mark
condolences,
just
Ash.
comes along and just like finger bangs my monologue. Thank you so much, Mark. I was preparing that all day.
All right, we'll continue your monologue because
by all means, since we've already paused.
You
so
may
rather
continue.
abruptly.
I thought maybe you were done with the monologue. Okay.
Just remember, if my mouth is moving and words are coming out, I'm still speaking. So
basically, you do an hour-long monologue.
pretty much, you should never say anything, Mark. Not while I'm talking, for God's sakes.
Okay, knock knock.
Nuggets of wisdom, Mark. Nuggets. Emphasis on nuggets of wisdom. We've got some great conversation lined up for you tonight, as we always do each week on Night Terrors Radio, the fastest hour on live internet radio. So, as I always ask our guests and our co-hosts, how has your week been? How is everyone's spirits? How are we getting through this? Are we getting through this? Are we stumbling, shambling, gliding, floating? How are we doing this thing, this life thing?
A mix of shambling and floating right now. I got my second vid shot yesterday, and my head's still a little swimmy after all that. But I wanted to give you my condolences, Ash, because I know you're going to have to find a new revenue stream now that they are removing porn from OnlyFans.
It comes as a major shock to me.
You can no longer force people to pay you to keep your clothes on.
Well,
Wait a minute. I think I'm on the wrong show.
the amount of props I was able to write off on my taxes last year from OnlyFans is the only thing keeping my house in structure here. That's it.
And the lights go down.
Right. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. I had a fantastic night. But no,
And everybody.
well, I kind of like.
In some ways, it's rocking, and other ways, we're all hanging in limbo.
I mean,
Quite literally.
like, isn't the OnlyFans thing like? Now I got to talk about OnlyFans. Since you brought it up, bastard.
Oh boy.
So, OnlyFans. I mean, let's face it. Isn't that like a horrible sort of bait and switch business model? To get that many people involved, to get that many people an alternative revenue stream, and then sort of pull the rug out from under. I mean, in all honesty, I haven't heard of any horrible stories about like human trafficking with OnlyFans. I'm sure there are horrible stories out there. I'm sure there are. But, I mean, this isn't really like, roadside prostitution or something like that. I mean, a lot of people are making a legitimate income off of this, both male and female. Sure, it is largely from a female source, but I mean, let's face it, if somebody came up to me and they're like, hey, listen, you've got an alternative to bussing tables. show a little bit of ass. I would respond with, "Oh, you're going to get the whole fucking thing, baby, because I'm not going to bust tables. I'm going to get on a cam on OnlyFans." If I had the opportunity, I would be doing it right now as we speak. Now, however, you can both thank me that we're not doing that.
Did
I
I
was about to
say
get very
wrong
concerned.
show? I think I made a mistake. No, I'm just kidding.
It was that left turn at Albuquerque, Jane. That's
This is the Ring of Fire. No pun intended.
right, yeah. Which was the name of my show on
Oh.
OnlyFans. It was me,
And
a little bit of lighter fluid,
Wait, did I mention I was hooking on the side? Oh, wait.
an old Zippo.
That's-
I had some lawn darts. I had 2 simultaneous cams running, and an old teddy bear that I called Mr. Frisky. And that was the entirety of my OnlyFans show. It was more like a 3-ring circus, really.
I got
Okay.
nothing.
Okay, I got
But
nothing either.
But,
Dead fan
but the
silence
fans
there.
loved it. I got to know some great people in the ER and the burn ward. And it was a lifestyle choice. And damn the man for taking that away from me.
Whatever you choose, Ash, I still accept you.
Well, at least I have a support system. And I have a very physical support system, too, because the last thing I did with the teddy bear put me in traction, and it was horrible. And I won't do it again. Not for
You
that
know what?
money.
Old Splitfoot is making more and more sense now.
This is the only time that I get to shuffle off my my mild-mannered persona.
Letting some steam out
Yeah.
here. Yeah, I
This
get
is me
it.
living
Get it.
vicariously through the internet. So, I met Jeanne about a year ago. As you can see, she can obviously roll with the punches because she's still here, which is more than I can say for some of our previous guests. Having a nun on was probably a bad decision in the first place. But we want to welcome her to the show. She's got some fantastic stories to tell tonight. But first, can we get a little bit of a background to the audience, Jeanne? Sort of like who you are, where you come from. I've talked about you being an actress. So just give us a little bit. Sell us. What is your elevator pitch for Jeanne Young? Jeanne Young.
My pitch. Well, I mean, I can just, I'm not used to doing interviews, as you can tell, but I grew up doing live musicals and live theater. Big singer. Both my parents were involved in the arts, so that was sort of my inspiration. I was in a band once when I was 17. Of course, we never left the garage. Then that sort of got put on the back burner as I went through some, life lessons, as we like to call them. Come 2005, I just couldn't deny the artist within anymore and just decided to hop into some acting classes, but it really had very little to do with acting and much more to do with therapy. Certain fear-based thresholds that sometimes hold us all back in life. And it's still a great form of therapy to this day, actually. And then it led into me being on both sides of the camera. I started doing producing and couple years ago, started a production company with my partner, who I was hoping was going to be here. Maybe she'll hop in at some point here. So I'm on both sides of the camera, and like you, Ash, we had one project that was it was put it this way, it was the closest that I had been. I had gone to Hungary and met with the head of Origo Studios, and we had funders, and I mean, we were ready to go, and came back home. And 2 weeks later, COVID happened, and the world shut down. And so industry, and now it's like, even though the world is a little bit upside down, and we're sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop, if you will, with the next set of protocols and whatnot. At the same time, the industry is coming back to life, and there's been all kinds of interest from other producers and funders alike, which is really interesting, because what used to be kind of really difficult to do as an independent filmmaker is suddenly gotten easier it's getting easier for some reason. I'm not sure what that's about, but I'll take it. So and then just still doing the acting thing, and just, every day it's a grind. You guys know.
I think
They
that,
really-
and I hate to say this because even the lead in for this is so misleading. But to even say something like, the good thing about COVID or what COVID has taught us, but I would say what COVID has taught the entertainment industry, from what I've seen, is that we're no longer a world that can totally rely on mainstream channels of content anymore.
Mhm.
And I think that's why we're getting so much interest and luckily for me, especially right now, we're getting so much interest in independent film. And we're talking like grassroots independent efforts where people are self-funding, people are getting equipment, getting cameras, they're sort of doing the guerrilla filmmaking thing, is because a lot of these production companies are sort of finally coming around to the idea that the world might have stopped for them, but it didn't stop for everybody. People were still able to do things, even if it was in small numbers and small productions. And if they're going to stay alive, if they're going to keep flourishing, they've got to step outside of those comfort zones for content now.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, while the big boys, okay, the big studios and whatnot, and the networks shut down, us smaller indie people we just kept going, and safely, of course,
Yeah.
right? We do our best, but you can't. I mean, you can't just shut every single thing down. You just can't. It's impossible. I mean, you have to survive. You have to keep going. You have to live. And a lot of this misinformation flying around certainly doesn't help the situation.
We're a weird
This
divided
this
country
is when
right now,
Tommy
anyways.
Wiseau will finally
It's
get his
so
moment.
I mean,
I said this is when Tommy Wiseau will finally get his moment.
I think he's had a few moments. He's built a pretty damn good career just on being Tommy Wiseau.
I think we did. Then
You came back. You're back. You
Oh.
froze for a minute, but you're
But
back.
no, I think we're realizing a lot of things. I think unfortunately, we've been realizing a lot of negative things about human nature and what happens when people are afraid. Things we've already known.
Yeah.
Get people in a room, get 5 very intelligent people in a room. And I think this is where unfortunately, America isn't really good at taking a step back and realizing that things aren't as black and white as they think they are. Because there are times where America says, hey, we're smarter than this. We come from a society that has a lot of culture. We've got open channels of communication. We're also a society that's learning more and more of the power of diversity. Like, why in the world aren't we getting this? And it's like, put 5 extremely intelligent people in a room and inject fear. And that same social experiment is going to echo throughout every social class. It's the fear. It's not the intelligence. It's not the education.
That's right.
It's the fear factor. It sort of always has been
That's
and always will be. And,
Yep.
and to sort of transition into what might not, or at least people might not think is the logical transition, at least as far as our show goes, but as far as our content goes, for years and years, and I mean, it's because it's a very popular subject right now, talking about ufology, the idea of extraterrestrial intelligence. For years, I think we've been operating under this idea that fear is going to totally dismantle society if we find out that we're not alone. That religion can't handle it, our economy can't handle it, social classes can't handle it. And I think maybe this is one of the first times, especially because information is so accessible. It might not be processed correctly, but information is so accessible that finally we're realizing that everyone's sort of sitting there going, yeah, bring on the aliens. Because our life is sort of shitty.
Well,
and we need something new to
Yeah.
come in and spice this shit up.
Yeah.
in the past year, they have declassified a ton of government documents on UFOs.
Right,
too.
and I'm saying that here's the litmus test. They've declassified them, and half the people are sitting there going, man, I knew there were aliens. Shit, I've known that for about 50 years. Don't fucking bother me none. However, the goddamn Democrats. So it's like, no matter what you put in front of us, there's still human nature that comes in and goes, well, shit, we got problems here. I think if there was going to be wide disclosure, now's the time to do it, because we are so bothered by the things we can't change on the human level that to bring in something interstellar, something extraterrestrial, it might finally be that unifying factor. Or I would even be content if we brought them in and they were assholes. At least then we could unanimously talk about something else for a change, where we're like, man, I don't care if my neighbor's a jerk. That Pleiadian is
Wait a
a
minute,
fucking asshole.
You mean there's a vast universe out there? Wait. We got to talk about this for a minute. Slow down.
No. The stars are just holes that are poked in the box so that we can breathe.
I knew it was I knew the universe was in a big old box. See, I knew this.
Right.
Door once, and I walked into nothingness until I died.
And that cat may or may not be alive. We still don't know yet. The jury's out. So you've had some experiences, some thoughts. Your sort of introduction to an idea that, the universe is a little bit bigger than we think it is. What were some of your first thoughts, Jeanne, even going back when you were maybe younger, about what was out there? And then what are some of the experiences that either solidified or changed those ideas?
Well, for me personally, I just feel like, and I thought everyone was like this until I got older and I realized that people do live in bubbles. But I always just knew as a child that there was more. Like I just knew it, and I had certain experiences. For instance, like coming out of my body. I've been out of my body more than once. And then I started studying Robert Monroe, who, if you guys heard of him, he wrote Out of Body Experiences. He left behind the Monroe Institute. He teaches others how to have controlled out of body experiences, and you can pretty much go anywhere at will. And I was studying that, and I actually was able to control it once, which was a mind-blowing experience. So there's that. And then I had other uncontrolled experiences. I had experiences where I dreamt, for instance, about events that were going to take place, but didn't realize that, of course, when I had that dream until it happened like a week later, like 911, for instance. And I believe I read that this is a phenomenon when big events like this take place. It's not uncommon for many people to have the same type of dream. But I dreamt about 911 a week before it happened.
Can we pause there for a second? Because you and I have never discussed this, Jeanne. And
okay.
What was the dream that you had? Because I've got, and I'll try to keep it brief, I've got an experience prior to 911, and I want to hear what yours was.
Well, mine was more symbolic than anything. Not so much seeing the plane, if you will, but it was the kind of thing where I was at this church that more ended up being like a mosque type of place, and I walked in, and there was a ball of light being passed around, and people from there were taking the ball, and they were crying out for their children. And then I was out front, and I was surrounded by snakes, and I was floating in the water. And then next thing I know, I was surrounded by oil. People often think that we can have both beauty and destruction in one boat, and it doesn't happen. And there were a lot of other I actually have the dream written down somewhere. I wish I had it in front of me right now so I could tell you more detail. But the dream didn't make a whole lot of sense when I was having it until 911 happened a week later, and that it made perfect sense. All the symbology that went on in the dream, and just between what's going on in the world, between the countries, the control, everything. So it wasn't so much that I dreamt about that. I didn't see the plane going into the building or anything like that, but the symbology behind it.
So I was having some weird dream-related experiences prior to 9/11. And about a week before the events of 9/11, I was scheduled to fly back for a friend of mine's wedding. Now, I was in New Jersey at the time, flying back to Illinois, and I would have been leaving out of Newark. So I would say probably around late July. And I was a frequent flyer at that point. I had flown around a lot. Even flown on commuter flights between like Long Island and New Jersey. I've been on a ton of planes. And had never had any real flying anxiety. Late July, I start having this recurring dream where I'm on a plane and the plane does not crash into the ground, but has a mid-air collision. It was so frequent that a week before, I had told my then wife, now my ex-wife, I think I'm going to actually try to ride the train, the bus, or drive back to Illinois because I'm having this dream so frequently, I just can't ignore it. I mean, if it had been once or twice, no big deal. But I was waking up almost nightly, very shaken, very disturbed. And at that point, I was like, how can this be anything but an omen? Now, of course, I was not scheduled to fly out that day. It was a week prior. But I have heard other accounts, yours now and others, where collectively there was a dream experience happening those months prior.
Yep.
And not just Americans. I've had friends in the UK who were having dreams about a month, 2 months prior that were recurring leading up to those events. Now, I hated to interrupt you, but whenever I hear that, especially about that event, I think that it changed so many things on so many levels for modern history that the ripple effect for that event will still be felt 200 years from now. That's my opinion.
Yeah. You know, when this dream, it wasn't like a normal dream. It was almost as though I was there, and it was very intense. Like I could feel every single emotion and every single action that was going on. Like when I walked into this, building and these women in their burqas, and they were huddled together, and I can't even explain the sorrow that they felt and the crying, because I could feel it too, even though I didn't really know why. Like I could actually feel it. And then the orb light that was being passed around from person to person. And then the French doors opening up out onto this, the flat river rock, and then surrounded by the snakes. I mean, it was all just very surreal and very real. And I could feel every ounce of pain that was attached. And it was interesting how it went from this pristine beauty to this world that was just, the oil and the dirt and the filth and the evilness that I was suddenly surrounded by. It was really interesting. Of course, it made sense later on.
Of course, yeah.
Nash, me and you were in that neighborhood, a month before it happened too?
Yes.
Because that was right about the time. That was just after we went up to Providence, and when we came back, me and you went and took a bus into the city, and we're just walking around and seeing all the different areas.
Strangely enough, I had been in both the downtown site and the Pentagon site within about that same month, because my ex-wife had an account at a store that was in the Pentagon area. So we were always driving through that basic traffic loop there. So it was very strange. And it was just a strange time to be on the East Coast. It was a strange time to be in the New York City area. It was a strange time to drive in and out of the city. It was just strange altogether. I think that's a whole other show, which we might get into as we inch closer to the anniversary date. But So this interconnected idea, which seems to be something that people tend to also explain. We've talked to people who have had some NDEs, and there tends to be this huge shift in their consciousness after that experience, where they never really felt connected to people on a massive scale, like connected with their fellow man, or connected with the rest of the population. But that seems to have changed for them. As you start having more experiences, Jeanne, do you feel that even if you don't share that connection, that connection is there?
Absolutely. I mean, it's every single moment of every single day. There's a connection. I can feel the energy, and I'm very I'm actually quite sensitive to energy in general, and emotions and what's going on around me. I tend to feel things tenfold. Wish I could predict the future, but no, I can certainly feel. I'm very, very sensitive to it. Yes, I feel connected at all times, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so flabbergasted by what's going this human collective masses who are living sort of under this veil, if you will, and they can't seem to poke a hole in it. It's been going on for so long, as you spoke of just a few minutes ago, about how just, I mean, throughout history, they've been pitting the masses against one another. I say they, but the masses have been pitted against one another throughout history, for as far back as history goes. I mean, how many wars have we had, and so I don't know what it is that people just can't see the bigger picture. And that's, what's happening. It's not really what it's about. But I feel like that's sort of the reason why, because I guess they don't want us to know, whoever they is, this one. I don't want to go too far on that because I want to keep my career. But
we're getting into shadow government here.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we can,
but it's
what
so
we can say, Jeanne, because I mean the world is just full of political divisiveness right now. But
yeah,
I think what we can say is, when you're looking at two opposing political candidates that are supposed to have very different platforms, the thing that I always struggle with is, I should not feel as though those two people have more in common with each other than they do with me. And I think that's the problem we're having. No matter what side, far left, far right, or how close to the center they get or away from it, our representatives have far more in common in both aims, insight, and endgame than they do with the common person. I think it's been a very, very long time since we've been able to look and say, wow, that person's from my neighborhood. I remember when they worked at the Walgreens. Love their success now. I can get behind
don't
them.
say hello anymore. Say hello to your neighbor. Connect with them energetically. Come from the heart center, because to me, that's truly where it lies. That's where the truth lies. That's where it's important, that connection. And we have lost that indeed.
So let's circle back around to this idea of, we've sort of lost our connection with each other. We understand that the universe is a pretty big place. We've got neighbors somewhere. What are some of the things that you've personally seen, Jeanne, that told you, okay, this is evidence? Even if it's just for me, this is evidence.
That we're more than human? That we're just...
what do you... we've got some maybe near and distant neighbors who are taking some joy rides through our airspace occasionally.
Oh, well, okay, so... Okay, the world's going to think I'm crazy again, but it is your show, so maybe not.
Hey, keep going, guys. I'm just going to get some water.
I did.
All right.
Wait, he's not going to hear my story.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, so this is not uncommon. All right. So I did have an experience once where I saw a Bigfoot.
What?
When I was a kid, the elementary school that I went to, actually, he has heard this story, so he's not missing too much. But
All right.
I'm telling my Bigfoot story. So I was in elementary school, was surrounded by woods, and me and one of my friends went to the woods, and we walked down this path, and just being kids playing around, and we didn't even realize how long we had been gone. And I just happened to look over, and there it was. There was this Bigfoot creature that, once again, I didn't really know what it was until later down the road, and I learned of a Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever you want to call it. But it was definitely a Bigfoot. And at that time, the teacher came, all of a sudden appeared, and was very upset because we had been gone a long time, and this whole school had been looking for us. So that was an interesting experience. And I've met other people who've seen them and experienced them. I think that they are interdimensional beings because just of all the things I've read about it, where people have followed them and follow their footprints, only for the footprints to just end and go nowhere. So it's another interesting phenomenon. I mean, how many life forms live here upon us and with us, and I, interdimensionally, like the Bigfoot.
Yeah, and talking about alien creatures, like not just Bigfoot, but like I do scuba diving as a hobby, and I go underwater, and there is stuff that I see down there that it doesn't look like it's something that's natural to this planet.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing.
And how much of that environment is still largely unexplored?
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I can only imagine what there is as you go more towards the center of the earth. It's. I actually got certified to dive. I don't do it often. I would love to do more of it, but we went on these dives, and it's just, oh man, it's just a whole other world. Amazing. And one time I was coasting along the bottom, not really paying attention what I was doing, and I noticed there was this like ledge that went like this, sort of a drop off ledge. So I just stayed along the ground so I wouldn't get lost. But as I went over that ledge, it was literally like staring into an abyss.
Oh,
And
totally.
I just had a little tinge of fear. I was like, I don't think I'm going to go there. And I better go back. And I looked up. I was way down, and I don't even know how I got there that quick, but I went back up.
That is the closest feeling I think any normal person will ever get to being in space. Like you're totally weightless.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, it's a whole other world. That's all I can say. And I can see how it would be very scary, especially if you were in one of those vehicles that can go much deeper.
Yeah. Well, if you ever make it down this way, hit me up and I'll take you with me. We'll go diving.
I would love that. I love it. Yeah.
We have
Let's do
accounts, and we're talking dating back as far as we have nautical records of strange lights over the water, strange lights descending into the water. So this idea of undiscovered terrain, right here on this planet, is very synonymous with the UFO phenomena because of this long-held belief that, these beings might not have to go outside of orbit to do whatever they're doing, whatever kind of reconnaissance they're doing. There's a huge possibility that there are places right here that are acting as bases for extraterrestrial intelligences.
Absolutely. I mean,
and why wouldn't they, right?
What and who was here long before human beings were even in existence here? I mean, it's just, the universe is old, and it's just, yeah, I mean, it's wonderful to think about. You're talking about undiscovered, unknown, but there are places here that are known that people are still in denial about, like cities under the ocean, Atlantis, different things. I mean, that some people still deny, but they exist and they're real. And the UFO sightings, like Dr. David Greer heads these UFO groups out to do all these UFO sightings. It happens all the time.
Now, I've never actually been to the location, but I have read some fantastic stories about encounters people have had with hybrid humans, humanoids in the Mount Shasta area.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's known for that. Yeah, known for being a sort of a vortex-like energetic place, sort of like Santa Fe is like that.
Didn't we have a guy on a few weeks, or maybe probably a couple months ago at this point, that was it Mount Shasta, or where was that? Where he's talking about when he was in the military, went off base and
right. I'll have to
things
revisit
went
that. I don't
sideways.
believe it was Mount Shasta, but I think we sort of grazed that subject a little bit with him. So
Yeah.
So in your opinion, Jeanne,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll ask this for Mark too. Do you think there's the possibility that there is an advanced civilization that is existing concurrent with ours on this planet?
I think there probably is.
I would say absolutely.
Whether it's subterranean, whether it's aquatic.
Or they look like us and they're just blending in.
Which
you got to get the special sunglasses so you can see them.
They live. What was the name of that film?
Yes,
they live.
Which I tend to think,
see
if they're going to be somewhere and if they're trying to blend in, then the West Coast would probably be an absolutely fantastic place for it.
Or the hills, many hills, Appalachian.
Have you ever met anyone,
in Holly
Jeanne,
weird,
that you felt strongly that they were possibly non-human?
Sure.
And what was that experience like?
Well, I have to think about that for a minute. Hold on.
I co-host a show with one of those.
You did?
Talking about Rob's hemorrhoids?
I was talking about you, Ash.
It's like the big fish story.
Is it you, Ash?
Big.
It's you, isn't it?
Well,
I do think that, okay, so I do think that that sometimes we do meet individuals that have a very distinct energy, and sometimes it's of the light and sometimes it's of the dark. I think that well, there's yin and yang, there's dark and light, there's good and bad, whatever that means, but and that goes for all life, right? So it's like that, Ash. I believe I shared that experience with you, where I got an audition to be part of this film that was based on a true story that took place in the Bohemian Grove, based on this family, a very wealthy family.
And can you relate that experience to us? Is this something that you're comfortable talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's not I didn't get sucked too far in, but I almost did. So I did this audition, and one of the producers, it was her like grandmother or great grandmother, one of her distant grandmothers, and I believe, and the history of the family goes pretty far back, and they owned a mansion there. And it was based off of the true story about a lot of these ritualistic type ceremonies that went on, and the sacrificial ceremonies and whatnot, and just a lot of crazy things that, I mean, everyone's heard of even people who don't believe in this stuff have, heard of the Bohemian.
Oh yeah, that's where all the world leaders get together and they have those eyes wide shut parties. And
Exactly. So, but this family, they're from there and they live there. And so they had a lot of experiences themselves, and their family was very wealthy. So they were kind of like in those circles. Anyway, this film, I auditioned, and it left me with a bit of a concerned feeling. And so at the time we had a shaman who worked with our family, who has since passed on, but he worked with our family, and he was a very wise man, and asked him about it just to get his feedback. And it came back almost immediately to disassociate myself with the project, that this is not what I think it is. And it's very dark. And so I said, okay. And I listen when I'm told these things by someone like him, and backed off. And long story short, these people pursued me for 1.5 to 2 years, and that is not normal in the film industry. Period. They don't care. They don't do that. You don't want to be a part of it. You don't want to be a part of it. They don't keep pursuing you, but they were indeed trying to pull me in, and I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, the blonde hair, the blue eyes. I don't know. Who knows? But I don't want to find out. Um, so that was a very interesting experience that I had that kind of relates to the industry and otherworldly things that go.
So when we're talking now, this is interesting because we're talking to people who might have sort of this ecclesiastical knowledge, things, knowledge of the esoteric, things that we don't necessarily know of, whether it's practical, whether it really works, or whether it's just this weird sort of cult mentality. But we were talking earlier about like non-humans, meeting someone that you just felt was sort of on a completely, different spectrum. Have either of you heard of the story that Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins has related on the air a couple of times?
I haven't.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know for sure.
Now, if you've ever seen a podcast, heard an interview, seen him on television, smart guy.
Weird bald alien looking
But
guy.
an extremely smart guy. He's kind of one of those guys where you hear the conversation, he's well read, he's got a lot of world experience. You'd instantly think, oh, this guy's got his shit together. Like, he didn't get sort of chewed up and spit out by that entertainment engine.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
He kept a very strong grasp of who he was,
Right.
what he wanted, and his sense of self seems to be very strong. So he's been in a couple of conversations. I think one was on the Howard Stern show, and I believe the other one was in a podcast with Joe Rogan, where he talked about an incident where he was in a conversation with someone, that someone then related to them that they were not human, and then went on to physically change their appearance in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a story that he's attested to multiple times. Now, the first maybe 2 or 3 times I had heard the story, now instantly I was, sort of, obsessed with this idea, because this is a major personality. This is someone that, for the most part, he owns a baseball team. He really reaped the rewards of Smashing Pumpkins as an entertainment act because he owned most of the material. So here's a guy whose back catalog of songs still generates a huge profit. This guy gets a ton of revenue in. He's got plenty of great stories about he and Dennis Rodman palling around that he has absolutely no reason to interject any of these more, high-profile Hollywood sort of stories with something this obscure. And then he goes on to say, and this has only been, I think, within the last couple of years, when sort of probed and asked, that he would not say the person's name on the air because apparently it was a very well-known household name.
Mm-hmm.
Which intrigued me.
It was Ozzy.
Even further.
It's got to be Ozzy. That's the only thing that makes sense.
You've got to try to get David Icke on your show. David Icke, you guys know who David Icke is, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, talk about a world of knowledge. That man is amazing. I've had the pleasure of seeing him a few times, in person, and got to meet him once. And his knowledge and his experiences are just phenomenal. Where I first heard about him was at the UFO con in the Bay Area. We have one every year, the Conspiracy Con and the UFO Con. I don't know why they call it conspiracy though, because it's really not. It's really based on fact. No, seriously, like very educated people who were showing you proof of various events and whatnot. But I remember if it was through Greer or Ike, but it was one of them. They were showing a video of how, because through technology, sometimes technology can see what we cannot with the naked eye. And there was a video like of a bush, for instance, time, and they tried to cover it up, but like just for a very nano split second, you could see his true self, just for a split second. But the naked eye would not be able to see it, even while watching the news necessarily.
Right.
I mean, it's just something like, right, technology, you'd have to go. Anyway, when they put the video together, they showed us in such slow. Do I believe they live among us? Absolutely. All sorts. Like I said, the good, the bad too. I think they're both here because I feel like we're at a point in life where it is all coming to a head. You have the light that is literally meeting the dark right now. Like we're coming to a head. We're intersecting right now, and that's why I think the world feels so strange and it's so upside down, and there's so much turmoil. At the same time, a lot of people are coming together and waking up and seeing some things that they never saw before. So
we had talked about in the Bigfoot encounter. I think is a fantastic sort of addition to some of your experiences. What's the one thing that maybe you have experienced which rattled your belief system maybe more than the others? And this can be any life experience. This can be something paranormal, non-paranormal, or anything.
What do you mean by rattled? Like it made me almost not believe it, or because I've always believed it?
Or it was so definitive.
Okay, well, like the one time I went out of my body when I was studying Robert Monroe's teachings, and this one evening, I came. He uses a lot of the right brain, left brain, binaural beats, and the hemisync that helps you kind of get into that meditative state, not asleep, mind you, just in a deep meditative state. And so I was in that state, and I actually came out of my body, and I was sort of hovering above myself in my room, and I suddenly had the awareness that I was out of my body. And it is that at that point, Robert Monroe says, when you reach that point where you are wide awake and you are aware of the fact that you are out of your body, that's when you can control where you go and what you do. So I said, well, I was very surprised by the fact that I was completely aware of my surroundings and that I was out of my body. And I said, well, go big or go home. So I decided I wanted to go out to the universe. So I willed myself to the universe. And time doesn't exist when you're in that space. Well, time doesn't really exist, period, right? Everything is simultaneous. It's space that made it so that we had to create time for a form of communication. So next thing I know, I'm in outer space, and I'm literally just sort of hovering there, looking around.
Was Mark there in a scuba outfit?
At the planets, and I'm looking back at Earth, and I'm going, holy shit, I am in outer space. Like I'm in effing outer space right now. Like I'm here. And then all of a sudden I was like, holy fuck, I'm in outer space. And a little tinge of fear took over. And as soon as I felt that fear, it was like boom. And it was like a jolt,
right.
Like a jolt of lightning. And I sat straight up in bed, and I was like looking around. I'm like, okay. And I was like, wow.
So you think those dreams that people have, like when they're falling and right before they hit the ground, they jolt up? Do you think that might be out-of-body experiences?
I think it absolutely is, because I had several of those before, I started even studying Robert Monroe. I came out of my body, and I remember willing myself up and to not hit the ground several times. And then I would it was like kind of hard, it was hard to slow down from hitting the ground, but then you go back up. So yes, and I've actually read that could very well be the case, and I believe that, yes.
Now, have you had a lot of lucid dreaming experiences as well?
Me, I wouldn't say I've had a ton, but the ones that I have had were very lucid, like the 911, or like when I dreamt about my mom divorcing my dad. I dreamt I've died 3 times in my dreams. If you want, I'll tell you one of the dreams if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
It's not long. I was just in the desert, and I was going to see. This was a dream I had when I was younger that made sense later. Our shaman that worked with our family as an adult was of the Ifal, okay, the African descent, the Ifal. And so in the dream when I was younger, I was going to see this Black man who was my mentor. He was a guide. He was someone who I loved and trusted and looked up to. And I was driving this like convertible pink Cadillac, and I go and I see him, and basically he tells me, get back in your car, and just told me this specific road to drive up. He said, no matter what you do, don't look back. And I do what I'm told. So I get into the car and I start driving up this hill. I couldn't see what was on the other side. I came to the top and I went off a cliff. There was nothing. There was like this cliff. And on my way down, I was like, I trusted him. I loved him. Why would he tell me to do this? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So I went down, 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 felt like a roller coaster. I died, and then it felt like a roller coaster. I went whoosh, and I went up, and I was just soaring above everything. And the peace and the contentment and the utter love that overwhelmed me, I can't even explain it. It was just like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm more than my body, a lot more. So that was another one of those very, very lucid, symbolic dreams. And I believe that I came out of my body that night.
Can I relate one of my most vivid lucid dreaming experiences to you, Jeanne?
No.
Oh boy, this
Okay,
one
I'm
again.
gonna do it anyways.
Oh boy.
So
Of course.
So anyone who knows me knows that for the most part, I'm pretty much emotionally stunted to that of like a 9-year-old child. Like my entire office is filled with action figures. I love cartoons. I tend to relive some of the best parts of my life when I was younger and was still very inquisitive and curious and less cynical through those things that brought me joy when I was younger.
Ask him about Castle Grayskull.
So I have multiple Castle Grayskulls, unfortunately. If I get one more, I'm probably gonna have to talk to an attorney involving my my marriage. So I have way too many collectibles as it is. I got some deep dive stuff. So I was having a very strange dream where a group of people owed me money. Right? It was a very sort of gangsterish sort of dream. And it was sort of like, this crime syndicate or criminals, or I don't know. I didn't know the backstory there. I owed them money. They owed me money. And I knew that they were at this, like, roadhouse sort of bar, this very sort of wild and crazy bar. And I was going
to... Is this the dream where you dreamed you were Patrick Swayze?
No, it wasn't.
I told you not to tell anybody about that one.
But I did have a red shirt on, and he had a red shirt on in Roadhouse. So anyways, so I dream, like, I've got to go in there. Like, I've got to go in there and confront these, like, criminals about this money. So I go in, and it looks very typically like some, underground sort of criminal hangout. And I approach the people, we start arguing, and then they pull, guns out. Now, this was a normal dream until they pull the guns out, and instantly my mind goes, oh shit, I'm going to get shot like in that other dream. And at that moment, I was like, oh shit, this is a dream. Like, as soon as my mind said that phrase that connected it to a similar dream, oh shit, I'm going to get shot, as in that other dream, my mind said, oh shit, this is a dream. And then my mind said, oh shit, I'm Wolverine, because that's what you can do in your dreams when you're a 9-year-old child.
Right.
And now all of a sudden I was Wolverine from the X-Men and did horrible things. We won't get into that. But it was completely and totally lucid. Like, in that moment, I knew that not only was I me, I was Ash Hamilton, I was not the character in this dream. I was dreaming, I had complete control over everything in the dream, and these were not real people. So I could sort of enact this crazy, albeit homicidal,
Manipulate it. You can manipulate
right,
it.
rampage in this dream. And I woke up and it was so cathartic because, you can sort of slay demons metaphorically. But man, if you have a lucid dreaming experience where you're doing it almost physically, it again was so rewarding. Because most of my dreams are that I'm finding an action figure from 1984 that's super rare. And I'm like, why is it still on the shelf? And I find it and it's lovely. But this dream, of course, had that lucid quality to it. I had another dream that was lucid, but that was Spider-Man. So most of mine, again, are as if I'm a 9-year-old child. But there's a sort of freedom there. Because, I'm not dreaming that all my bills are paid. Or I'm not dreaming that I finally got a vacation. Like some of these adult concerns play very second fiddle to this core wish fulfillment that I still have that's very childlike.
I think if we were truly in tune with what and who and what we're capable of, I believe that things like money wouldn't even exist, because you would have no need for it. You would have no need for the vast machine to tell you who you are and how you should live and how you should think. And I believe that society as a whole is very dumbed down in that way. People are not in tune with our true full potential of who and what we are. And of course, I mean, we don't have all the answers, of course. I mean, God only knows, I mean, it's very interesting and fun to ponder what and who we are and what the universe is and where it all started and where we come from. I mean, it's just mind-boggling if you start going there. But yeah, I think we have so much potential to do so much better than what we are. Like I said, things like money, a lot of these things that we have wouldn't even exist because we would have no need for it.
The more that I start to, and this has probably been more so in the last, I would say.
I dreamt about, by the way. All right, go ahead.
Huh?
I dreamt about zombies when I was younger, by the way, but go ahead.
I think, and I think it's especially because, so my marriage that I'm in now, my wife is extremely supportive, and I feel that this is probably one of the few relationships I've ever really had where I don't really feel bound by any kind of like ridiculous gender stereotypes. I'm totally myself, which is a guy that is not hugely into sports, which loves cartoons, which loves the fantastic and loves creating. And I love creating in all aspects, whether it's film or, I was a traditional illustrator for years, and, I do a lot of writing, but I've never sort of been nurtured, in a close relationship the way that I have in the last 7 years. So in these last 7 years, I have learned more to embrace way more of of a childlike fascination with things than I think a lot of adults are really allowed to. And I'm able to think a little more rudimentary, as in, like, I understand the importance of, I like toys. I like cake. I like, it's interesting, but like the things that I'm thinking about that are sort of impulse driven likes and dislikes are probably far more childish in their scope and intensity than has ever been since I was a child. So when I tend to like things now, I'm able to like them without a lot of those hindrances that come with it of being an adult, where you're like, I like cake. Oh my God, this is 380 calories per piece. I can't do this. Now, that's not saying that I have no impulse control, because the adult will eventually come in and step in and be like, now you're going to have to work out for like 2 hours. You know what I mean? It's like, it comes in as like, now here's what you've got to do to counter everything that you've done. But there initially is this ability that I have to enjoy it in the moment a lot more than I've probably been able to in the past.
I love that, because it is so true. The present moment is literally all you will ever have. You will never have anything else. And that's what I'm saying. You just hit the nail on the head. Realize,
He-
Eckhart Tolle, it's one of my favorite quotes. Realize deeply the present moment is all you will ever have, and make each moment count. And how do you choose to walk through the world? And I love that you walk through the world with a sense of wonderment. And I'm kind of like that in a lot of ways too. I hope I never lose that kid inside. I choose to eat the cake feeling a sense of wonderment
Yeah.
about that cake. It's like,
yeah,
give me the whole
he,
darn cake.
he stumbled onto that whole philosophy though just now by accident. That was really just Ash's 5-minute love letter to cake.
Well, I love cake,
You love cake.
but
You love
I
cake.
mean, yeah, there's going to be a
How can you
part of
not?
that adult brain that I can't shut off.
But there's no veil there while he eats the cake.
Yeah.
He can eat the cake with a sense of wonderment, and the cake is his freaking rocket.
Like
And that's the thing about being an adult. You can have cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and nobody will stop you.
it's a couple things. I mean, it's like the stuff that I'm doing more stuff for enjoyment. We get to this weird point where everything is equated with some kind of monetary equivalent. And
exactly.
that was like
Exactly.
the beginning of the end for me for the longest period of time, when I was extremely cynical. I wasn't really enjoying much. And I didn't realize it, that everything that I was doing, even when it was something as simple as I'm going to make myself a poster. I've got this idea for a design. I'm going to sketch it out. I'm going to draw it. I'm going to paint it. And I'm going to like it. There came a point where every time I went to do that process, I was thinking about, well, is this something that I can add to my portfolio? Is this something that I can sell? Is this something that I can use for a project? Is this part of some pre-production process? And it got put into this framework where I was doing stuff too purposefully. I was
Right.
not living to do.
We all get caught in that. We all get caught in that rut.
That's why every time I say bye to somebody, I don't just say bye. I say have fun. Because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, why
Well,
do
I
it?
hug a lot
Yeah.
more than I used to. Thank God.
Here's what I think about that. And I do think there is something to this law of attraction, this energy, if you will. Because I feel like if you are truly doing what fills your soul, what makes you happy, the rest of it is sort of whatever happens around that is sort of just a byproduct. I think it's important. I think too many of us live like hamsters on the wheel and not doing exactly what you guys are talking about. Just be true to yourself. Do what fulfills your soul, what makes you happy, and the rest will fall into place. And I believe that. I full-heartedly believe that. The rest of it is just a byproduct that, unfortunately, these monetary things that we place such value on. I mean, they're just, unfortunately, that's the way the world is right now, and you kind of can't live without it. You have to pay the bills and whatnot. But I do think that those things even will be byproducts if you're living in a way that is fulfilling to the soul, which goes well beyond this body and this world, and it extends out into the universe, and we are all connected by it.
Now,
That energetic life force, we're all connected by it.
One of my favorite movie quotes is actually more from an exploitation film. And it's not spiritual at all. It's more sort of a live fast, die young rock and roll motto. But there's this little film with Nicolas Cage and Amber Heard in it called Drive Angry. And it's exploitation to the fullest. It's a bunch of muscle cars and guns and explosions. But at one point, they're debating over this huge risk that they're either going to take or not going to take. And Amber Heard's character looks at him and goes, "Come on. Nobody's on their deathbed saying, I wish I hadn't fucked so much." And that's sort of a philosophy. I mean, not pertaining to that exact thing, but it's sort of that philosophy that I try to hold, that there's so much that unfortunately we can live to regret. And a lot of those regrets, the barometer is the risk you didn't take,
Right.
as opposed to the ones you did. I've taken risks that have went totally sour.
Haven't we all?
And I still don't regret
Well.
those as much as the ones I never took at all. No matter how
Yep.
dire the situation was, how horrible
Yep.
the consequences were, I'm able to tilt my head more and go, I got through that. Wasn't the best thing in the world that I've ever done. Wasn't a great decision. I can come to terms with that a lot more than sitting there late
Yeah.
at night going, I should have done that. I should have went for it.
You learn and you evolve and you grow from the bad just like you do the good. I mean, it's like you kind of have to have it all. And I'm grateful for all the bad experiences, just like I am for the good. I'm so grateful for them because I wouldn't be who I am right now if it hadn't been for them. You know, and we always have these like awakenings of various sorts as we go and as we grow and evolve. So, I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, Jeanne, we've said it a million times. We're going to say it again. This is the fastest hour on the internet. It is every week. It's hard to believe that we've been on for an hour and 10 minutes.
Wow.
So if people are wondering where they can see what projects you might be involved in, what you've got coming up, what you're doing, or if they just want to follow you on social media, what are the best places for people to go to do that?
Well, all my social media across the board is Jeanne Young Biz, Jeanne Young, Young, Biz, Biz, Jeanne Young Biz, you know, like the biz. I do have a couple of films that are supposed to be released this year. I'm not 100% on that, but I shot 2 feature films since COVID started. One of them is called Demon Fighter, and I am possessed in that film, and it's actually based on a true story.
And now, is that with
So-
John Azuna?
Yeah, he's in that, and he's the lead. He's the star. I have a lead role in it as well, but he's like the lead. And then I did another film with the same director called Love in Quarantine.
Nice.
And that was a lot of fun. We shot that. They're both supposed to be released at different times this year, but I'm not certain on that. You know, that the dates could change. But so pay attention, you know, look out for those. And, you know, got several projects on the horizon for producing. And Coda Tribe Entertainment is the name of our production company. And yeah, it's a daily grind.
Well, we want to thank you for being on the show tonight. And I want to urge everyone, definitely check out what Jeanne's got sort of coming down through the pipe, because she's got a lot of great projects she's involved in. And hopefully we'll be talking about some projects she'll be involved in with my brand coming up here pretty soon. We had a great time tonight. Again, fastest night on the internet. Do you have a couple moments off the air for us, Jeanne?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I hope I did okay. And I know as soon as we hang up, I'm going to come up with all kinds of good stuff. And I'm going to be like, can you invite me next week or the week after? 'Cause I got a
Oh,
lot
well,
of
you're
stuff
definitely going
for
to be on here again now that you've been indoctrinated.
Oh yeah, yeah. We made it through
yeah,
the
and I want
first
you to
one.
meet. I want you to meet my partner, Linelia, because she has some pretty amazing stories to tell
We
too.
cannot meet her. We can't wait to meet her. And again, let's definitely have a time for you to come back. We've had such a good time tonight. Thanks everybody who came in. Thanks everybody who interacted in our chat rooms. Again, we are simulcasting on Facebook, YouTube, and soon to be Twitch as well when we can get that hooked up. We reach a pretty wide audience here. Thanks everybody who's also been listening to our downloadable podcast of the version, our audio only, and on YouTube, so that they can see the wonderful video of our guests. Thanks so much again, Jeanne. Everybody else, have yourself a good night. We're going to talk to Jeanne off the air about fantastic things